downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Hello, Lee Summit. I'm Laura, and this is your flash briefing for the week of February 3rd. City Council will meet for regular session Tuesday night, 6 in Council Chambers in City Hall. Meetings are open to the public or watched live on the city's YouTube channel. If you can't watch, catch the recorded meeting on demand on the YouTube channel or by subscribing to the Council Debrief newsletter, which breaks down 3 to 4 key agenda items. Subscribe at cityofls.net. Heads up drivers, Southwest 2nd Street between Southwest Noel and Southwest Market Streets will close on February 3rd for 1 week to repair failing sanitary sewer manholes. Find the detour route at cityofls.net. But good news, the intersection of Green and 3rd Streets is now open. Lee Summit Arts and Culture wants you to sign up for the next Discovery Series on February 7th at 6:30 at Bridge Space. Join visual artist Mona Cliff as she lectures on the evolution of Native American beadwork and its role in preserving culture. Finally, to register on the city's website. And stay safe and informed with LS Aware, the city's free alert system designed to keep residents and businesses informed of emergencies such as weather events, road closures, and certain non-emergency events. The city can quickly send messages via phone, text, or email depending on the preferences set up by the user. Users choose how to be notified and what information they wish to receive. Sign up at lsaware.net. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. Quite a few of us are getting questions. I know I've gotten a few questions about the plan, so I didn't know if just for the public knowledge. I'm not a politician. I feel like I'm just an average person in Lee Summit. They have a football field set up. Inside these cones are their football fields. Our two-car garage is we're gonna bring the driveway back through here, and it's gonna go right here. And then, so my family has chickens. When we first got chickens, my husband said, don't treat them as your pets, treat them as chickens, because we're going to be eating the eggs, and I would like to use them for meat. So don't treat them as your pets. Well, We now have 6 chickens that I consider my pets, and I will not let him kill for meat. So we live downtown, and we love living downtown. These are my children. The first one's Lincoln, and Amira, and Sophia, and Caleb. This is a great neighborhood. Downtown is one big community, and all of the kids get together and they play basketball, and we like to walk to the farmer's market. Here, hold my hand. It's an easy walk, probably less than 10 minutes. The farmer's market has always been a very important part of my life and my family's life. As a matter of fact, when my daughter started kindergarten, I dropped her off and I was going shopping at the farmer's market right behind Lee Summit Elementary. And I was teary-eyed because she was my first and she was going off to kindergarten. And Terry, the butterfly lady, the one that's in the purple shirt, and she used to make little butterfly stickers for everyone, she gave me a big hug and was just so empathetic to the fact that my daughter had just started school. How are you guys doing? Doing well. How are you? Yeah, very good. A lot of the farmers there, my kids they've watched my kids grow up. I love Lee Summit in general. I love that it still has a small town feel while embracing growth and the arts and diversity. And I feel like downtown specifically embodies that. My kids go to Lee Summit Elementary, and a lot of their teachers live downtown, and a lot of the business owners from downtown live downtown. So when we're out walking downtown, we see so many people we know. I lived in Africa until I was 5, and then we moved to the United States, and I've lived in Lee Summit since. A lot of my childhood, my mom was a single mom, and I feel like I was essentially raised by my community and being on council, and it's just such an important way to give back to the community that raised me.
I state your name.
I, Mia Pryor,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications
this day of April 2022. The election process was fun. I got to go door to door and talk to people, which is my absolute favorite thing to do, is talking to people and learning about people. I even had people inviting me into their house for dinner or inviting me back to their house to meet their spouse. And I knocked on a door, and the lady that answered the door was my kindergarten teacher. So it was a lot of fun. Is it on? Hi everyone, I'm Councilmember Mia Pryor. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I have one on, can you not? Okay. Maybe I went. I love being a council rep for District 1. I know everyone says this, but District 1 is by far, in my opinion, the best district. Raintree Lake, that's part of District 1. I love that community. Actually, my husband and I got married at the clubhouse in Raintree Lake. I really love all of South Lee Summit. I love the growth that they're going to be experiencing soon and that they've already experienced. I wanted to say that if you guys have a concern, please come tell us what your concern is, because we can only address and help with what we know. We're there to kind of bridge that gap between constituents in the city, and we're the voice of our constituents, and we can go to the city and voice what their concerns are, what their ideas are. So if you have a concern,
just checked again. They are not updated yet on the Department of Revenue, so I don't have those numbers yet. But these are all numbers that we continually monitor on a month-to-month basis to make sure we're in line. And then franchise tax, a little bit under 50%, but a big part of that is because natural gas is a big driver in that category, and we're just starting to see higher revenues for that now that we're seeing the cold months roll in. But overall, in the total taxes, looking good. Fines and forfeitures and licenses and permits, I mentioned, is an area of slight concern. Did speak with development services, though, on the licenses and permits front, and even though they said they started off the year a little bit slower than they expected to ramp up in the second half of the year as more projects come online. So just we're keeping an eye on it, but nothing too worrying as of right now. And then property taxes here, so we got a commission for that. Didn't get it this year, so that's $250,000 of revenue lost. Another big one, though, for that is our EMS and dispatch contracts, and we just billed for those, and so that's why that one's a little bit lower, but again, nothing of concern. So overall, that's how we look at the mid-year point. And then this shows the year-over-year changes, and like I mentioned, we're still seeing positive year-over-year growth with all those taxes. It's just some aren't hitting the marks that we expected them to hit when we initially approved the budget. So. On the expenditure side, personnel is obviously our biggest expense. Right now, we're about 5.5% above mid-year of the last year, but still well within budget, and the same goes for the total general fund operating. We're seeing higher compared to last year, but well within budget. Again, looking for the 50% of budget spent, you can see the personnel below that 50% mark. Most of these are below. The exceptions are the transfers out and interdepartment charges. Transfers out, we just do them one time at the beginning of the year. So that's why that's at 100. Interdepartment charges, those are the VERPs, MERPs, SLRPs, and then the overhead charges. And the overhead, the ERP payments are done as a one-time. The overhead are done on a recurring basis. So that's why that's at 67%, but we'll hit those exactly. And then the capital outlay was the pumper lease for fire. And so that was a one-time beginning of the year expense. But overall, right at that 50% mark, which is actually a little bit high since some of those categories we just did a one-time transfer, but looking good overall on the expenditure front. And then this shows our year-to-year. Again, we're showing higher expenses compared to last year, but all of this is within budget. On the personnel side, we're seeing a little bit higher on overtime, but also a big change has been the loggers, which of course was approved, our change in loggers from a 5-year average to a 3-year average. So that's caused loggers to go up in this fiscal year. And then some of the transfers out, like we did the special obligation debt transfer at the beginning of the year for the Green Street project. So, but overall, seeing slightly higher, but everything again is well within budget. And I will pause there just to see if there's any questions on the general fund front before I get into public safety sales tax. Okay, so public safety sales tax, again, seeing positive outlooks throughout on here for sales tax, personnel, and then total operating. So they're kind of seeing the same thing that we're seeing on the general funds side with sales tax, slightly down compared to where we expected it to be. Investment earnings have come back stronger than them, which has pushed them above that 50% mark. And then the year-over-year change, again, you can see the investment earnings that have really boosted that one, but still seeing 1.5% growth on the sales tax front for the revenue side. And then this is their budget versus actual, and so they are well below budget for most of their expenses are within that personnel services. I think it's 10 out of the, 10.5 out of the 14.5 million is in personnel. And so we're only at 35% budget spent. I know when we did internal projections at the mid-year point, they expected to be below what they initially had approved in the budget. And then this shows the year-over-year change. And I know we talked about this in the first quarter update, but there's just been a lot of personnel shifts either from general fund to PSST and then also additional hiring. So that is why that personnel services is so much higher compared to last year's. We're starting to ramp up how many personnel are in the public safety sales tax fund, and that's what's really driving that growth in expenditures. And that's all I have for public safety sales tax as well, but pause for any questions on that front. But overall, yeah, summary level, we're in good shape, and it's something that we continue to monitor on a month-to-month basis, especially as we hit the back half of the year on the revenue side and the expenditure side, so we can make sure if there are opportunities to deploy resources in the community, we can get to them in this fiscal year. So.
Rader, do you have a question?
Okay, as a new person on this committee, it's really exciting to learn new things. But, so if we were falling way behind, where would we get the money to pay expenditures? Would we pull from the general fund, or how does that work?
Are you talking on the public safety sales tax side, if we were falling behind?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would probably end up coming back that we would look at, well, we'd first look at those variable expenses, see if there are other areas that we could potentially cut back on that aren't personnel side, and then, yeah, we'd probably end up looking. They've also built up a significant fund balance in that fund that's a pretty good backstop. You'll hear a little bit about that in coming presentations, but right now they're at about like 7 million in fund balance, so that fund balance has helped, yeah, back them up a little bit as we've grown. So they do have a slight backstop there.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, Mayor Pro
Just
Tem?
a comment and I guess a question. Eric, thank you again for dumbing it down. I love the dashboard, the arrows and green and yellow and all that. Makes it easier to kind of not get too caught up in the weeds with all this data. But I guess one of the things that I think would be helpful as soon as that information comes out on the sales tax, kind of keep us informed on that. I know after the holidays each year, that does change the numbers significantly. So I'd be curious to see how that impacts Lee Summit
Yes,
in
for
our
sure.
budget. And then also, I guess, I assume you all are keeping track of just, you know, with all the talk about tariffs and all that kind of stuff nationally, globally. I don't know what that's going to do, but I'm sure at some point it could impact, you know, revenue and taxes and, you know, just spending habits in general. So.
Yeah, yes, we will definitely, we're kind of in an uncertainty period, even with grants, as you probably saw earlier in the week or last week, I forget, they're running together now. But yes, kind of keeping an eye on all of these on a
I figured you
constant
guys were.
basis.
Yeah, so just keep us in the loop.
Yes.
See any trends that are kind of going a different direction.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I was going to ask about those sales tax numbers as well, so thank you for hitting that. And appreciate this. I also appreciate the colored arrows. It really does make it easier to understand what's going on at a high level. So I like what you've done here. Thank you very much.
I do have to give our finance director more credit for that than me, because she ushered in the change in looks. So she didn't like all the graphs or the charts.
Well, it's a team effort, it sounds like. We appreciate it. All right, thank you. All right, and then Ms. Lake, are you handling the next item? Okay, so next is 2025-6734, presentation regarding the FY24 general fund unallocated fund balance projects. I did speak with Mr. Dunning before this meeting. He had a prior commitment elsewhere and knew that Donna would be able to step in and walk us through this.
Good afternoon, Donna Lake, Assistant City Manager. In front of you today, we'll talk about the general fund balance and the reserves and some opportunities to utilize those across the organization. I know we presented and that we had the final audit for FY24, and that ended up with a $48.3 million, almost $48.4 million fund balance. And this slide just kind of shows you that based on our new fund balance policy, that if we spend that reserve fund down to the 35% cap, we have about 14.32 million to spend, and then, you know, kind of those 5% increments if we went down to the floor, which is 25%. It would give us, you know, you guys could choose to spend all the way down to that 24 million if you so desired. At that 35% cap, we've been having a lot of discussions about opportunities to put those dollars to work. And at the last meeting, we approved the downtown safety package. A couple of those ordinances came through. You'll see an ordinance related to that today as well. And then you also approved the communication strategy plan for $100,000. So that leaves us about 12.7 million remaining on that cap, or to get us down to that 35% level. So here are some suggestions and recommendations that the city manager has had. Staff has done some work to review some of these, and of course, we've talked to the chair about these as well. One of the options is to put $10 million towards the Green Street Market project. And with this particular thought is to prevent us from having to go out for special obligation bonds. We talked about using special obligation bonds for about $10 to $11 million to work, put funds towards that project. However, that is signing the city up for about a $770,000 continuous debt for 20 years on the general fund budget. And so kind of looking at how do we predict and see where revenues go, kind of the conversation you just had about, there's a little bit of uncertainty with these new tariffs and that sort of thing. This would be able to help us cash fund, not 100% the remainder of that project, but there are other, as you are aware of and as you'll hear in future updates about the Green Street project, we've talked about those tax credits and leveraging those and some of that funding coming back to help continue to bridge that gap. It's about a $14 to $15 million gap total. But there's contingency funds in the Green Street project. There's also funding in the budget currently that was to help address should we have issued those special obligation bonds. So those funds would still be there to close that gap, and we think we can do that relatively easily if you chose to recommend, to forward this recommendation. The other recommendation, we talked a lot about the ERPs, and those are equipment replacement programs. And the final report was issued in November. I think we're planning on attaching that as a staff report on the February 11th council meeting. But then also, this is about a $2.5 million influx into the VERP specifically. So really our vehicle equipment replacement program. As we looked at that final report, it really talked about kind of merging the equipment, the IT equipment, and then also the service agreements for IT and app replacement for IT into one fund. And so we're kind of working on some of those ideas and figuring out how to, in process-wise, ensure that we're leveraging those replacement plans as more appropriately or as best we can to their full potential. The other thing that we caught as we talked to the chair was at the last Finance and Budget Committee, you guys had asked us to go ahead and pursue the gateway monuments. And so tonight in the, if you choose to continue that direction, then that $300,000 would be part of the Budget Amendment 6 that you'll see tonight as well. So those are kind of what we're talking about. We do have some verbal commitment from the IDA to commit about $100,000 to the gateway monuments. So trying to leverage that, and then what we would do is encumber these funds and then work with the IDA to get a more formalized agreement, and then also this would allow us to get that design professional on board to really see what we want to do, size-wise and style-wise with those monuments. So. Other items that were still on the list of ideas to consider would be the compensation study. Staff would propose that we would look at maybe including that in our FY26 operating budget. And then, of course, you guys would see that when the budget process came through in July, or slightly before July, but prior to FY26. Another item that had been in this proposal was $1 million toward sidewalk gaps. This would be a request that was reconsidered, understanding that I think you've heard from the Director of Public Works that yes, the funding is always beneficial and helpful, but it doesn't mean that the capacity to do the work is there instantaneously. So because they already have funding towards sidewalks and programs through the capital improvement process that are in place. But this would definitely, have been an addition to that. And then we're also thinking that we would, as World Cup is coming around, we've had a lot of thoughts of that. There's a lot of community meetings. There's a lot of regional meetings going on around World Cup. We haven't had any specific funding requests to date, but we thought maybe we would address that in the FY26 operating budget as well. And then we would kind of keep that Browning property. We pinned it last time, and so we thought we would just kind of hold that as another project for the future. And then also, you know, it may be some project that ends up in capital improvement plans or in another place. So it's not quite developed as exactly what we would do with that project at this point. So we still have about $4.5 million in that group of discussion items that we just are keeping an eye on and have some recommendations there. Oh, sorry, I guess I should pause and let you ask questions about the general fund items.
Thank you. So I think kind of structuring this conversation a little bit, I think it's going to be us as a committee to try to make some good recommendations to council about what we think priorities should be, right? And so we're kind of balancing the cost savings if we go ahead and cash fund the downtown market, Green Street, that, you know, we save on interest and on the issuance of those bonds. But then we have less wiggle room in our balance for things like these unknowns we're talking about in terms of World Cup funding, in terms of global economy kind of issues that Mayor Pro Tem Lopez mentioned earlier, just kind of not knowing the uncertainty of what revenue is going to look like in the future, and then other priorities that the council might want to address with those funds. And then I did want to flag the ERPs. That's a kind of still kind of an unknown, right? That 2.5 million is a placeholder basically, because we've looked at it. We know there's a need, but there's still some more homework to do to figure out exactly what that number is. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Yes.
Okay. So basically, where that number came from was kind of backing out of saying, okay, if we put 10 million towards Green Street and fund the other priorities that we said we're going to do, like the monuments, what's left basically, and knowing that that need may be bigger and that we may have to come back and put some more funding towards it later. So that's kind of what I want the committee to consider is what do you think is the most important in terms of having a cushion to address other things, saving money on doing the bonds. Can someone talk a little bit about what the cost is of doing the special obligation bonds, both in terms of the actual issuance of the bonds and then the amount of interest that we end up paying on them? Like what is the benefit to the city of just cash funding instead of doing that?
Brianna Brichter, Director of Finance. Just the cost of which issuance for issuing the bonds is about $130,000. And then if you take that $740 over that 20-year timeline, you're saving about $4.8 million in interest costs by cash funding it.
We always talk about with the incentives and things, the net present value. So like if we kept all that money in cash and we invested it, we would get some kind of interest off of it, but it wouldn't make up for like that 4.8 million, right? So what's kind of the net hit to the city? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't know if I know that number off the top of my head. I could try to pull something together though.
I mean, it's okay. You don't have to have everything.
Yeah.
So, but we're looking at probably $4 or $5 million in interest that we could just avoid paying if we.
Yes, over
if we
that
cash
20-year
funded.
time frame.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But I
We're
can
talking-
get you. I'll
Okay.
email you.
And
guys
that's
the
of
number.
just of putting the extra 10 million in, so it's almost
Yeah,
half
that's
of
that's
that.
comparing if you were to pay the cash right now or issue bonds for 10 million, what you're paying out.
Okay, so that's a pretty significant, it's almost half of that amount that we'd be saving. So instead of $15 million in cost because of the 10 million bonds plus 5 million interest, we'd only be paying 10.
Yeah, and then I would just advocate that flexibility in your general fund. It's not usual to obligate your general fund operating dollars towards debt service because you're committing to that, and we really should probably make sure we include that in our long-term projections for the 20-year time frame too.
Do we have any other questions from the committee?
Go for it.
Thank you. I just want to understand a couple of things. The monuments, intro monuments. What exactly what exactly needed to be done to the monuments? You're wanting 2 new monuments, okay, in 2 different locations. Okay, I see.
Yeah, it would
Okay.
be the east and the
All right.
southern part of the city, kind of those gateways into the east.
Okay, very good. And then on the sidewalk gaps, did you say that that wasn't money that was necessarily needed by Public Works right now?
No, what I was saying was, they have funding allocated towards sidewalk replacement. However, and of course, obviously, they would always utilize any additional money that was given to them. It just, what my understanding is that, Mr. Park, who's our Director of Public Works, had said was that it doesn't instantly equate to, because of capacity, obviously, they've got the plans and the sidewalk gaps that are being funded now. It doesn't increase their capacity and mean that that $1 million would be instantaneously utilized. You know, they're still following their sidewalk program and plan, but it doesn't mean that they wouldn't need the additional $1 million for that.
And if I recall
It'd
from
just
our
be
prior
future.
discussion, I think the consensus, the thought that I got from them was that having that money allocated kind of lets them plan a little bit better, that they know that the money is there and they can make their plan for 3 years or 5 years out, but there's no way to immediately put the dollars to work, so.
Yes, thank you. You're saying
Thank
it
you.
better than I did.
Thanks for that clarification. Thanks, Chair.
Chair, to that point though, on that question, but it still does expedite that process of sidewalk repair, correct? I mean,
But-
part of CIP, but
Right, so like I said, it would include, it would enable them to plan better for the next round of sidewalk repairs, yes, so.
okay, just because you
Yes.
guys were on that topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have a couple comments, Chair. So we have talked about this before, and I appreciate you doing the recap, and thank you for the update. And I know you all have put a lot of time into this. And yes, we have, I mean, we're all in on the Green Street Market project, and I would hate to pay extra interest. I don't think that's good use of general funds or taxpayer dollars. So it's a chunk of change, but I think that's why, you know, we worked hard, we were prudent, staff and previous councils and our council has been prudent about using these reserves, right? So I think that makes sense to go ahead and continue the success, or continue towards the commitment that we have already made on that property across the street by using these reserves that we have. I think that makes a lot of sense, and not have to pay, you know, do a bond referendum and pay extra interest. I think it makes a lot of sense. As far as the gateway monuments, I mean, I think we made a commitment towards that as well. I mean, we've already started that process on the north and the west side, so I think that makes sense. As far as equipment replacement, I mean, we already have a program for that in place. I mean, and that seems to be working fairly well. I know with public safety, I know we have some new fire trucks and, you know, that kind of equipment that was ordered recently. But I think you have these extra reserves, Chair. I think this is taxpayer money. I think it needs to go back to regular taxpayer public improvements. So I think we should really be cautious on how we use the rest of it. And it has to be for the true public benefit. And so sidewalks and street repairs, I think, and other infrastructure are important. So, but yeah, I mean, I like the direction we're going right now with kind of the top recommendations.
Could you go back to the slide that shows the current balances? Okay, so the 35 is kind of what we said is the cap, 25 is the floor. But I think we talked about before, and it's on here, which I appreciate, that we think to maintain our AAA bond rating, we want to stay at about 30% at least. So we do have a little bit more space if we wanted to spend down a little bit more. I think, Mayor Pro Tem Lopez, your points about the Market Plaza are really good. And also, like, we've committed to doing it. It's not a will we do this project, it's we are doing it, and how are we going to fund it. So I think that makes sense to go ahead and allocate cash to that and avoid paying those bond expenses and that interest. I guess I still want a little bit more clarification on the ERPS programs. It seems like they've been working well so far, but you are foreseeing some holes, is that right? Can you talk just a little bit more about why we think we need to put some money into those?
And I'll ask Brianna to do that.
Brianna Berichter, Director of Finance. So the ERP audit that we did really, and this was done prior to me joining the city, but we asked them to finally issue the report in November because we heard from you all that you wanted a follow-up, and we needed to wrap up that audit. It really looked at validating what we were currently doing if there was some logic behind it. What it missed was looking at the current funds allocated. Do they cover your replacement over the next 5 years? And it didn't really look at the true fund balance piece. So really, it is just knowing that with me anecdotally looking at it, I can tell you, especially I have some concerns around the VERP being fully funded. We have just a little under 2 million sitting in that program. That is not very much for a community of our size. And so that was to just kind of shore it up. And then as we are currently in our workday implementation process, we are doing some differences in our funds, and we're really being cognizant to separate our equipment and capital funds from our operational funds. And they're kind of mixed together right now. And it just makes forecasting with those a little bit more challenging. So you're correct that the number is just a little bit more money towards those. We do have some work to come back and do, and we're working on that. It just isn't necessarily our top priority right now with the workday implementation and other items we've got going on. So if we need to wait till we have more of a final number on that, it's probably going to be a little while.
No, it's okay, and I just wanted to kind of clarify. So the idea right now is sort of based on your just professional expertise and experience, looking at that number, and it seems like there's a good chance over the next 5 years, as we have to replace these different vehicles, that there's just not going to be enough, and we're going to have to find that money somewhere or
Yes,
delay
and
replacements.
We did work with the Public Works Department, and they pulled their information on vehicles that they had on order, and it showed just a funding gap that we need to make up.
Okay, so based on what we've already committed to ordering, there's not enough funds there?
Yeah.
Okay, and what's that delta?
I want to say that one was around 4 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this 2.5, we're still short to get to where we need to be just for what the commitments that we've already made?
Yeah, and I think part of that is we will be bringing in more money each year, but we're kind of, overall, we're short to fund the whole program.
That's really helpful information.
Yeah.
So I would still look to the committee.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. I mean, appreciate the extra information that helps.
Yeah. And those are, like, what I would say is, like, that is what they've provided. And, like, again, we need to really separate out the funds, pull the fund balances, look at all the spreadsheets and projections and pull that in to really make sure. But that was just their quick analysis, too, of what was committed.
That's just for replacement. Like with this last, I hate to bring up a sore subject, but the last snowstorm, I mean, I think that was more of a personnel kind of issue, the challenges we had with
Yeah,
snow.
this is really focusing on vehicle replacement.
Vehicles, it's not even talking about plows or anything like that.
I don't know if the plows are in there. Yep, plows are in there.
They are in there.
I just wanted to confirm.
But it's just replacement. Yeah, it's not just replacement, it's not expansion or
Yeah, these are
increase.
replacements.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so it seems to me like it might be good for us to go ahead and earmark those funds, but with the direction, like,
We have to come
keep
back.
working on this, and
Yeah.
if we need to, and like we've talked about, we have a little bit more room in the balance, but we want to make sure that we're being responsible and putting the resources where they're needed. And things like, I think this is actually a really good discussion, because things that we've already committed to, like the Green Street Plaza, vehicle replacement for vehicles we've already ordered, these aren't choices. Like, I mean, everything's a choice, but this is already happening, and we've got to figure out how to pay for it. So we've got to prioritize the commitments that we've already made before we start looking at more expansions, right?
Yeah.
So at least to me, that's kind of how it strikes me from this discussion.
Yeah.
Councilmember Rader, do you have any additional?
I know you haven't been privy to all these discussions,
I'm trying to play catch up.
but these things that are being presented, we've discussed before. Staff has put a lot of time and thought into that, so these are priorities we've talked about for a long time.
So the 10 million. The 10 million that was put back for the Green Street, that we kind of thought that might be good to pay that debt back so that we don't have to pay interest on that. But is that a factor in getting vehicles? Can that money be used for, is separate?
No,
Okay.
but that's a good question.
I
'cause we
mean,
could-
you can allocate the funds.
We could
how-
allocate 4 million to the VERP and then
Then-
whatever's left over to the Green Street, but then we still end up having to issue these bonds and.
The cost of the bonds is, I think, in my opinion,
And part of what's helped us, I think, with the VERP a little bit is just the delay to get vehicles.
Because
You
of
know.
supply chains and like even when we want them, we just can't get them fast
Yeah, and
enough.
some things that I'm sure we want to order, we can't.
So
get.
part of it is Green Street we have to pay for now. It's being
Right.
constructed.
Right.
Yeah, we have to.
Vehicles, we're talking about orders that are gonna come over the next several years. So we could pay for Green Street now, allocate money towards the vehicles, and then know that over the next couple of years, we're probably gonna need to adjust that, whatever
That
we have.
equation of how it's being calculated for that VERP, we'll
and-
have to up it.
And for the last several years, we've been adding to this balance, so we might take whatever is added to that balance and allocate it towards the VERPs next year, or we might go down a little bit more towards this, spending towards that $20 million number. Like, we do have some flexibility and still maintaining a pretty healthy fund balance, so. But that's, I think, like kind of the framework of how we make the decision, but it's up to us to say what we think the best allocation is and recommend that to the council for consideration. So I feel like what I'm hearing is 10 million towards the Market Plaza. Go ahead and earmark that 2.5 million for the VERPs, but more homework. The 300,000 for the Gateway Monuments because we don't want to lose that matching fund if we can. And then, do we want to put money towards the sidewalks, or do we want to say at this point?
maybe
Those
hold
are-
on, just keep it to top three for now.
Yeah, so maybe put a pin in the sidewalks for now while we figure out what the ERPs are gonna look like? Okay.
Makes sense, yeah.
Do you guys feel like you have adequate direction? Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you for the
thank you.
information, it was really helpful.
You.
Thank you.
All right, now we still have more to discuss.
Yes, we have more.
All right,
But there's more. Let me get
but
to it.
wait, okay.
So one of the other items that has come to bear is a change in the infrastructure that's needed, the microwave infrastructure that's needed on our communications tower. So in the joint operations facility, there is funds to replace the tower structure itself, but all of the infrastructure that goes on it, we can either put old equipment that is no longer going to be supported through the regional radio process and by Motorola, who's the manufacturer of that equipment. So our recommendation is understanding that we have about 6.9 million, almost 7 million in the, kind of that fund balance. I'm working with both the fire chief and the police chief on this recommendation that we would use, kind of dip into that balance, which we don't have a fund balance policy because that's, as we went through that exercise, most organizations don't have a fund balance policy on other funds other than their general fund. And so that comes to about 2.965 million for that infrastructure to go to replace all of the equipment and on the tower for communications across the organization, or across the kind of this region and what dispatch partners that the fire and police have. So that would leave us about 3.973%, which is still at about 30% of the revenue.
Let's see. Could you tell me, when that public safety sales tax was passed, what exactly were people told they were voting for? Because I know it included both personnel and equipment, so I just want to because I believe from our discussions this is in line with the intention, but I just want to kind of restate for.
Did, but I think Chief Forbes can come down, or Chief Snyder can tell you, because I was not actually here
Oh,
when that
no,
was.
that's good, and then I'm
passed.
going to ask them, the chief, when you're down here also to tell us a little bit about this actual project and how it's going to benefit public safety, so.
Travis Forbes, Chief of Police. Yeah, the public safety sales tax, I believe, is about 3 years old now. I think 2021 roughly was when it was passed, if I'm not mistaken. And we did talk considerably about infrastructure projects in addition to personnel, as was pointed out earlier. A big reason for this fund balance has been personnel. Just the inability to get people hired as quickly as we would love to have them hired. That's created this fund balance. So I do think this is an appropriate expenditure. The tower project obviously goes with the joint operations facility, which we do have some funding from the bond issue to pay for that. The microwaves themselves are on each of our radio tower sites throughout the city. So many of our radio tower sites are on water towers, in fact, and it's replacing all of that infrastructure. So if those microwaves go down, the system goes down. It's pretty much a critical piece of our infrastructure, and it's very important that those are updated and operating smoothly. Not a real sexy project like you see out here with the Market Plaza, but definitely a vital project to our public safety. So we felt this was appropriate for this for usage of our fund balance and the public safety sales tax. And
just for my own information, so what does that, is that how you do dispatching, or is that how you, how our public safety communicate with each other, or what? Yeah, it's really part of the radio, and I'll get a little bit over my depth here because it gets very technical, but it's really the radio system. So it's how our officers, our firefighters, even our water department personnel are dispatched to call. So it's not just, it's a city project really, but it connects all the radio towers throughout the city and connects actually to the Mars radio system. One of the microwaves will be installed in Kansas City, in fact, to make sure that we connect with Kansas City's system. And we have seamless radio communications throughout the entire region for all our public safety partners. So if you think about it, it's also helpful for World Cup events, hopefully a Chiefs parade next week. These microwaves connect us throughout the region to make sure that all of our public safety partners can talk to each other. For the information. Do we have any questions from? So do we think this is, I mean, I think it's a good use of the funds. I think it seems in line with what the public safety sales tax was approved for. Do we feel good about? Yeah. Because I think we had kind of talked about this as being general fund balance before, but moving it into the public safety fund balance, it seems like it's in line with those priorities and kind of frees up the funds for some of those other projects that we talked about that are, well, some of them are public safety too, the downtown market safety package, but.
Yeah, I agree. And once again, we've already committed with the joint operations facility and all the communication pieces, and why, leave this component out of it. Let's just do it all at once. So, makes sense to me.
All right. Got consensus there.
All right. I think that's the end of what I have to present. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so are we ready to go into these different amendments? Does anything in our discussion today need to change anything that we were going to talk about here?
I don't think so. I think you guys, yeah.
Then we will go straight into Bill number 25-035, an ordinance approving amendment number 5 to the budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2025, is adopted by ordinances 9936, 9937, 9938, 9939, and 9940 by amending the authorized expenditures for the city. Mr. Gentry. And just for the committee's information, we'd kind of talked about prior to this meeting with staff going ahead and putting all these ordinances on the agenda with the understanding that we could choose to act on them today or recommend them to council just for discussion, kind of depending on how our discussion about the overall fund balance went. So I think we'll be ready to recommend these for approval depending on how you guys feel, but that was the thought process behind going ahead and putting them on here as opposed to waiting another meeting to come back and talk about them again.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Rick Gentry, Budget Manager. Stated the next item on the agenda is Budget Amendment number 5 to the FY25 budget. As part of our annual process, the departments go through and update position vacancies within their departments and their current FY25 budget, look at unanticipated savings that have come up in the first half of the year, and unanticipated expenditures, and then what planned expenditures they will have for the rest of the year, and they make those updates in our, what we refer to as our projections environment. This year's budget, one of the things we did put into the budget was we put in about $1.3 million in vacancy savings, because every year we anticipate having open positions throughout the year. And we just distribute those across the general fund departments, and we had a couple of departments that didn't quite meet that because there's smaller departments that stay fully staffed. They're not going to have those vacancy savings. So, but we did have some other departments that had additional vacancy savings that we're going to take advantage of and use those so we don't increase our general fund budget amount. So we have two departments to that process, the law department, municipal courts, staying fully staffed, which is great. And then I have a couple additional needs for some additional legal services, outside counsel and outside services they need to contract for. And then we'll be reducing the development services budget due to vacancy savings they met there, reducing that to keep the balance in budget. So it helps us maintain a balance without showing an increase in revenues. That see Eric's monitoring that very closely and have more information as that comes forward. As a part of the mid-year process, we also have to give departments the opportunity to identify requests they might need to help them finish out the year or meet needs to provide services. Some of these are personnel changes that have been reviewed with the city manager and approved and bringing forth for approval. Two ITS positions. One of them we have a position that will be opening up due to retirement, and one of these ITS operations manager positions will fill that position of the retiree. We want to do a little overlap of about a month so they can do that knowledge transfer before that person retires, and we wish them the best. Then another position is to reclassify one of our current positions within the department, making it an ITS operations manager. So she has all those folks with a wide set of skills, and she can assign those to projects and programs as needed and to meet their strengths as well. Do you have an assistant director of finance controller to deputy director of finance controller? That's to address as we're doing a little bit of restructuring the finance department and doing a realignment of the positions to line up with the job descriptions and so things will flow better. Reallocate or classifying a facilities maintenance superintendent to a facilities operations and maintenance manager. This position is kind of, as we've grown as a city and we've added more additional facilities to be managed by our central building services department, as we take on more responsibilities in there, so it's a reclassification of that position. Then in development services, they're like to reclassify one of their development technician positions to a customer service supervisor. This past fall, in one of our previous budget amendments, we reclassed several positions into customer service representative positions, and this will be a supervisor over those positions. And then the last item is adding an additional FTE, and there'll be in human resources for our learning and development specialist, and that will be to help the organization as a whole as we're getting ready for Workday and implementation, to help that kind of help the planning and the training and planning with that, as well as support all the city's staff's growth as we move forward. And that's kind of to address one of the ASR initiatives from past spring. Next to the pay and classification plan, so all the changes from the previous slide have been included in that. Also, there's an additional request under consideration is changing the CDB administrator into a grant specialist position. That's still under evaluation, going through the process review in HR. There are a couple other requests that have come in that are still under discussion with the city manager, with the departments that may come forward in the future. And then we also had the omission of a position that was approved in a budget amendment last year when we brought forth the pay and class plan for budget purposes, that communication and marketing manager position. This gets it back on there. It was on the FTE sheet, but not in the pay and class plan. So it was just kind of a Scribner's error as we went through that process. So Workday, we talked a lot about Workday. You'll hear more and more about it in later agenda items as well. Workday has given us the opportunity to kind of look at some of the practices and things we have today. Today we have our pay and class plan that you saw in there is right now it's got like 51 different pay bands and 10 different families, and it's exempt and non-exempt staff positions are kind of mixed together and blended in there. So doing best practices with Workday especially, is we're going to be separating those out to exempt and non-exempt staff, and then taking those pay bands that overlap, or there's a lot of duplicates throughout the pay and class plan, and just kind of putting those all together and simplifying it down so it's a much more useful tool and easier to explain, and as we put it together. And we still know in the future we do have the pay and growth plan coming forward, the study coming forth. So this plan does not change anybody's pay today or doesn't impact their pay. It's just merely taking today's pay ranges and just putting them over into Workday, just structure them and lining them up in the groups. So we have much smaller groups. So we're going from an 8-page plan down to 4 pages. Any questions about that? So I guess that's all. So that's lots of stuff in one budget amendment.
I do have one procedural question. Since some of this deals with the courts, does Mayor Pro Tem Lopez need to recuse on anything? Okay, and then since that'll leave 2 of us voting, do we still have quorum? Can we recommend this to council for discussion? What happens? Okay. Okay, there you go.
For which ones?
So that'll definitely be for 25035, and then does 25036 impact any of that? Well, we can hit that one when we get to it.
It does
now. Okay, and then this is budget amendment number 4 or number 5?
Number 5.
I think our slides have number 4 on it for some reason. Not a problem, I just wanted to make sure that our record was clear.
Yep, number 5.
Okay. Do we have any discussion from the remaining 2 members of the committee that can participate on this?
No.
Okay. I don't either. I think then you would make the motion and I would second. For discussion.
I think I can still second.
No, you can't
Not the
participate.
entire? Okay, that's fine.
I move to council a recommendation for discussion of bill number 25035, an ordinance approving amendment number 5 to the budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025, as adopted by ordinances 9936, 9937, 9938, 9939, and 9940 by amending the authorized expenditures for the city.
Second. All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Rader, second by Chair Shields to recommend bill number 25035 to council for discussion. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Rader.
Aye.
Chair Shields.
All right, that will go to council for discussion. All right, next we have I can be Trish, it's whatever. All right, next is bill number 25-036, an ordinance approving amendment number 6 to the budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2025, as adopted by ordinances 9936, 9937, 9938, 9939, and 9940 by amending the authorized expenditures for the city. Mr. Gentry again.
Thank you, Chair. Rick Gentry, Budget Manager. So budget amendment number 6 is basically the budget amendment bringing forth the changes that you discussed earlier in the unallocated fund balance for the general fund and the public safety sales tax transfer for the communications.
Have any discussion on this one? If not, I would look for a motion.
Chair?
Yes.
I move to recommend for approval to the full city council bill number 25-036, an ordinance approving amendment number 6 to the budget of the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025, as adopted by ordinances 9936, 9937, 9938, 9939, and 9940 by amending the authorized expenditures for the city.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lopez, a second by Councilmember Rader, to recommend bill number 25036 to council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Rader.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye. All right, next item on our agenda is bill number 25-037, an ordinance approving an agreement between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and LifeScan Wellness Centers for the purchase of comprehensive hands-on physicals for all public safety employees and authorizing the city manager to execute the same by and on behalf of the city. And I don't think that you're Deputy Chief Bunker.
I'm not. Major Nicole Walters in for Deputy Chief John Bunker. And that first item you have in front of you is regarding our annual hands-on physicals for all of our public safety personnel. So those physicals help us identify potential issues help us implement intervention strategies and programs or medical treatment, reducing absenteeism and improving our productivity. So we're asking for you to approve those. It's a good program. We've in our second year, at least at the police department.
Do we have any questions from the committee? And I would look for a motion.
Chair, I move to council a recommendation for approval, Bill number 25037, an ordinance approving an agreement between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and LifeScan Wellness Centers for the purchase of comprehensive hands-on physicals for all public safety employees and authorizing the city manager to execute the same by and on behalf of the city.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Rader, second by Mayor Pro Tem Lopez, to recommend Bill 25037 to council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Rader.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye. All right, next item on our agenda is Bill number 25-038, an ordinance approving an agreement between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Digi Security Systems for the purchase of 1840W custom solar-powered surveillance trailers and authorizing the city manager to execute the same by and on behalf of the city.
All right. Major Nicole Walters, Police Department, again, in for Deputy Chief Bunker. This is our mobile units. They are effective for monitoring areas of traditional fixed surveillance. May not be the best choice. So these come with high-definition cameras, motion sensors, and they have live monitoring capabilities. So they're ideal for situations in large public events and places where we have high crime. Our data will drive where we place those things. So.
What we see out at downtown days and that kind of thing.
Yes, you will.
Have any questions from the committee or discussion?
Just curious, so are these put into the budget to pay for these types of things? Is it already within the budget, or?
So the way I understand this one, and forgive me, but funding for this was provided by the unallocated general fund balance. So a budget amendment was approved in January of 2025 is what my notes from Deputy Chief Bunker say.
Sorry. Donna Lake again. It was part of that downtown safety package. So this was the cameras and surveillance equipment on trailers.
Okay,
So
thank you.
So the funding has already been approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lake?
Further questions?
Any other
thank you,
questions?
Chair.
If not, I would look for a motion.
Chair.
Yes.
I move to recommend for approval to the full City Council Bill number 25-038, an ordinance approving the agreement between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Digi Security Systems for the purchase of 1840 West custom color powered surveillance trailers and authorizing the city manager to execute the same by and on behalf of the city.
Second?
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lopez, second by Councilmember Rader, to recommend Bill number 25-038 to council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Rader.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye. All right, next item on our agenda is Bill number 25-039, an ordinance approving the award of an agreement for the lease of city fiber optic strands between the City of Lee Summit and Lee Summit R7 School District and authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for the same.
Good evening. I'm Diana Newman. I'm the Director of IT. And this is leasing 2 strands out of a 96-strand fiber going from Tudor and Douglas out to the airport. This is where also the R7 School District is leasing some property at the airport hangar. So this allows them to connect to their own network. The City of Lee Summit has leased other networking to the school district as well, so this has been a partnership that we've had for both.
Get a motion then.
Chair, I move to council a recommendation for approval of Bill number 25039, an ordinance approving the award of an agreement for the lease of city fiber optic strands between the City of Lee Summit and Lee Summit R7 School District and authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for the same.
Thank you.
Second.
I could hear
Sorry.
you.
It was weak.
That's all right. We have a motion by Councilmember Rader, second by Mayor Pro Tem Lopez, to recommend Bill number 25-039 to council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Rader.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye. All right, next item is Bill number 25-040, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a workday order agreement to purchase additional training credits for the ERP implementation and support in accordance with contract number 2025-0051 between the City of Lee Summit and Workday, Inc., and authorizing the city manager or information technology director to execute the same for the city.
Again, I'm Diana Newman, the Information Technology Director, and I'm also the training coordinator for Workday. This is an online ordering credits. We have had 90 credits so far, and the staff has taken all those credits. As we get more into the modules and see additional training needs, we are proposing to order additional training credits, and we can get them within a lower price with the ones we have already purchased. So we can purchase them as we go, but it will be additive, so asking for authority so I can order them online as we need them. And the money currently is already within our operating budget that we have set aside for this project.
Do we have any questions from the committee?
Did you say how many additional credits you were asking for? Just wondering.
Yes, we're asking for 140. This takes care of IT, finance, and HR, and potentially others that would be doing report writing or something in other departments. So we have expanded that.
Do you think that'll be sufficient for you to complete your training?
I think it'll be an ongoing, just as
Okay.
we learn more, and we also have a phase 2 coming up that will be additional modules that we haven't even looked at the training for those yet.
Okay, and you believe that it's all within your budget, so you're going to be fine with
Correct,
getting
yes, for
paid,
the amount
get your
that we're
credits paid?
asking for this evening, yes.
Oh.
And those 90 credits that we took over the last, not quite a year yet, it was taxing on the staff too, so we have to kind of balance workload, time to take training, and then the needs. So we believe this is something we can take. Once we purchase them, we only have 18 months to fulfill, or you lose them.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Good questions.
Chair, I move to recommend to full city council for approval Bill number 25-040, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a workday order agreement to purchase additional training credits for the ERP implementation and support in accordance with contract number 2025-005-1 between the City of Lee Summit and Workday, Inc., and authorizing the city manager or information technology director to execute the same for the city.
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lopez, second by Councilmember Rader, to recommend Bill number 25-040 to council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Rader,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye. All right. Next item is Bill number 25-041, an ordinance authorizing the spending of additional compensation under the professional services agreement between the City of Lee Summit and Cynda Gray, the contractor for the implementation of Workday.
So Workday is the subject tonight. I'm Diana Newman, the director, but also have been the program director and project manager on the Workday project. So as we have been implementing the project, we have definitely been taxing our resources. And originally, when we entered into this agreement, we looked at it as being a part-time position with the expertise. Primarily, it was going to be in finance, and now with that and payroll expertise, working a lot with HR because we're a smaller group. So it's really becoming more of a full-time need, and so we're asking to be able to utilize the hours, and we're saying $200,000 because it would have been at the beginning of the agreement to the end of 2025, so that it will carry us into phase 2, because we also have some other HR modules. So Cindy has the expertise of working at a municipality and is aware of the public safety payroll, which has been a challenge, and our expertise of contractors is lacking in that area. And then also just being working across the HR and finance teams and being able to pull the modules and work streams together to fulfill that. So between that expertise, and we're requesting her to work more hours because it is an hourly rate, we wanted to expand that to go to the end of the December of 25.
Do you have any questions or discussion from the committee?
Diane, is the 200,000 in addition to?
No, it's taking the full amount. So it started in July, so it would take us through the, not quite full-time equivalent, but it'd take us through July. So it'd be July of 2024 through December of 25. That's our goal.
Okay, all right, thanks. Thanks, Chair.
I'd look for motion.
Chair, I move to council recommendation for approval of Bill number 25041, an ordinance authorizing the spending of additional compensation under the professional services agreement between the City of Lee Summit and Cindy Gray, the contractor for implementation of Workday.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Rader, second by Mayor Pro Tem Lopez to recommend Bill number 25-041 to council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Rader.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye. All right, we're almost through this agenda. Bill number 25-042, an ordinance authorizing the approval of change order number 1 to the AVAAP statement of work that is subject to the professional services agreement between, is it AVAP USA LLC and the City of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Yes, Diana Newman, Director of IT, is the contract manager for the AVAP contract. This is a change order, primarily a change of scope, and it's adding some additional activity that we didn't have in there. As we've learned and worked with the system and began configuring it, there were some changes or improvements that could be made. And so within that, some of the changes are like a job management staffing model and also supporting 4 financial entities. So originally, currently in our system, we only have 1 entity, but since we are looking at nonprofit or something to be managed under the city, that would affect our configuration. So we went ahead and incorporated that. Also for expense reports, adding the GSA expense rate tables, and also doing time tracking for projects. While we had project module, we didn't have the details of the time tracking. And then also we added the labor optimization module, which allows police scheduling. They were looking at software alternatives, and by purchasing an additional module and implementing it with our current scheduling system, it allows police to be able to fulfill their needs by adding that module. And the implementation. AVAP is our implementation contractor, so whether we make these changes or not, it's additional resources on their end to implement. The other is we added the contract lease conversion, and then also integrations with applications. We had the adds and removals. So we added 9, took 7 away. So they also have unique reports that we would use, so that Workday has canned reports. However, with our configuration and maybe our data needs, they're also changing. We need to modify them. And so all of this is very specific in the scope of work, so the contractor changes every line item for a minor change. And then also just the end user training, which is where the larger portion of this is, and that's, we've requested them to develop our actual curriculum. So we start with Workday Adoption Kit, which is the base training that Workday provides, and AVAP will take that material, and then our unique configurations or changes that we have made, that it will incorporate that into the training and prepare training materials, and also train the trainer for the implementation. So going through that, we actually have the $123,000 is for the training. Again, it's already in our budget. It's just that we want to contract that AVAP will be fulfilling that under our current contract. We're amending it to ask them to perform that effort. And then the push and take was approximately $27,000, and that is the push and take of the adds and subtracts. But in reality, there was already money in the budget to cover that, so we're not really asking for any increased funds. We're just asking for change of scope. The other thing that changed is the timeline, and a very detailed timeline on shifting, and most of the time people come in and ask for an extension. We're actually moving it up believe it or not, with the aggressive schedule. But because we're doing payroll early June, to be able to hit our first pay period for financials on July 1, we had to move forward. So that changes when they would do their after production support. So now we're going to go to a staggered maintenance support afterwards. So it shifts their 6-week schedule of when each module is implemented. 6 weeks from go live will be, then it will trigger their maintenance support contract, which we also have with the AVAP. So it's really just details of the change of the technical requirements and also expanding the scope and pulling up the timeline and getting the contract to state that.
So simple.
Any questions?
Simple. Do we have, yeah, please.
So you did a presentation, was it last week or the week before, about on the workday with council? And I was just wondering, for my information, when will you fully be implemented? When will your program be fully implemented, your workday program?
So the first phase would be July 1, which is the HR and financials. Phase 2 is more like our training, the learning module. We also have what we call PRISM, which is archive data. So we're bringing active data into Workday in phase 1, but there may be data that we need to retain and we want to report with our active data. So that would go into the PRISM. So all of that is to start as soon as we go live in July and should be implemented by the end of December.
Odd.
So we're hitting our
That's
testing
fun.
stage now, and so this will be our taxing time, so, and it won't stop there.
Thank you for all your hard work on this. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
Other
Thanks, Chair.
questions from the committee? Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. I'm glad that you're the project manager on this and not me. And I would look for a motion.
Thank you.
Chair,
Yes.
I move to recommend for approval to full city council bill number 25-042, an ordinance authorizing the approval of change order number 1 to the AVAP statement of work that is subject to professional services agreement between AVAP USA LLC and the city of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Second?
Thank you. We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lopez, second by Councilmember Rader, to move bill number 25-042 to council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Rader,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye. All right, that wraps up the main business of our agenda. Next is roundtable. I just want to thank staff and the committee. I think we had some really good discussions tonight. I think a lot of times we can just do a lot of formulaic stuff at committees, just rubber stamping things that come through, and I think we had some really good substantive discussion about priorities and use of resources, so I appreciate everybody. Do we have any other roundtable from the committee? Roundtable from staff?
No, I just appreciate all of the work that we've accomplished tonight, so thank you, or at least forwarded to council.
We will adjourn at 5:15 p.m.